if someone was supposed to follow and learn the best practices from you, they could build their agent on Databricks, the production ready agent, right? Come up with version 2, come up with version 3, but be able to measure that it's improving and not regressing.
Exactly. We can walk through production monitoring and just making sure the agent is improving constantly. My name is Veena. I am a specialist here at Databricks in ML and AI. I've been at Databricks for about 1.5 years now, and largely I've been working on agents and LLMs and fine-tuning, et cetera, as you would have expected.
And why are we doing this special series and not a standalone YouTube video?
Yeah, the cool thing about agents and LLMs generally is that we want to constantly improve them, and evaluating and feedback becomes a little bit more complicated. So I think the path to improvement is a little bit more unclear. So we're setting up this series so we can follow how, one, we can build an agent, and two, we can continuously evaluate an agent, and then three, hopefully improve that agent over time.
How do you want to start?
Yeah, this all started with a hackathon Jitesh and I were a part of a couple of weeks ago. Both Jitesh and I write frequently for this blog called databricksters.com, and we write about really specific problems that we've faced with customers and otherwise. We found that a lot of these blogs become really helpful internally to solving other problems, or even tangentially solving other problems. So we wanted to build a really straightforward RAG agent that was able to answer people's questions based off of the blog posts that we've written and a lot of YouTube videos. So extracting all that information so it's quickly accessible. So we started with AgentBricks. So for those of you who do not know, AgentBricks is a new low-code solution on Databricks that will allow you to essentially just drop in your data, not really worry about an LLM specifically, and worry about your use case and optimize for your use case. So let's start. I'll first walk you through what a knowledge assistant agent is. This is what we use to build our agent brick brain. We are able to drop in our knowledge source really quickly here. So there's multiple different types of accepted files here. If you have PDFs, Word files, etc., you can just drop that into a UC volume and allow the agent to extract that. You can also use your own vector index that you have. That's what we did. So we took an index that we already have, because we have a lot of audio files that we wanted to transcribe as well. So now that we have loaded this index, we can specify different columns. For example, here, I'm going to specify the URL of this column and the text here and start creating this agent. This creates a knowledge assistant that will allow us to interact with our data in a straightforward manner. Any questions so far?
Yeah, what's the difference between an agent and a LLM?
Yeah, so an agent is something that interacts with an LLM. So an LLM, you obviously, like, people have used ChatGPT. It's a model that interacts with you, the chat interface. But what an agent can do is allow the LLM to interact with your document sources, like different tools that you may have, stuff like that, to give the agent or give your LLM power to answer questions. For example, like, you're thinking about a brain, right? An agent may be your entire system, but the LLM is the brain, right? You need still like tools like your hands to move stuff around. That's what we're trying to build here, like an entire human.
We're trying to build a second brain.
Yeah, we're trying to build a second brain.
And if you go back to AgentBricks, there were a lot of agents. Could you briefly touch on what kind of agents are available on Databricks?
So we have a lot of agents, like you mentioned, the information extraction agent. This one is able to convert a lot of text documents in a batch fashion to like different extracting key categories. For example, if you have like tax documentation, maybe like legal agreements, and you want specific names extracted, you should be able to do that with the information extraction agent. That's one. Two, the knowledge assistant agent, which is basically RAG. We also have a few other agents, including like Genie, multi-agent supervisor, which allows you to combine different agents together, and a custom LLM agent, which is the catch-all. If you want to generate content, if you want to do a lot of different like nondescript things in a batch fashion, you should be able to do that with custom LLM as well.
Right.
Just important to remember that all of these are in beta. So if you do want to use and test out the custom agents, you should go to previews in your workspace and turn on AgentBricks.
Okay, sounds good. Let's do a demo.
Yeah. Let me open this agent up. Let's compare it to, let's say, Claude. So like I mentioned, our knowledge assistant already has access to a lot of the blogs that we've written. So let's ask a question that we know we've answered. You can view thoughts also in the playground here to see what the LLM is thinking and how it's going to interact with the index. So it's searching our index, getting that out. And so the really cool thing about Knowledge Assistant is that it also has like citations automatically in the bot. For example, here you can see that it's referencing the blog that we've written about dependencies and having all of that answered. So, for example, here, with solutions for slow model logging. One, this isn't directly relevant to like what I'm like asking. And three, I don't believe it is. Actually, it is correct, but it's not exactly helpful. Logging less frequently doesn't really solve the problem that I want to do. Yeah. And another cool thing that you can have like in Playground is have a judges that automatically vet this solution. But yeah.
Okay. So if I am understanding this UI correctly, essentially I can ask a question and then get a response from a base LLM. And probably I can ask the GPT-5 model and the Claude model and our agent and see what I like.
Exactly. In the Playground, you should be able to compare and contrast multiple different agents or models. The cool thing about Databricks is that we have first-party access to a lot of the new state-of-the-art models, including GPT-5, Gemini, I think is more recent. We have the GPT OSS models and the Llama and Claude models that you can use as well.
When we say access, do you mean the open source GPT-5 or is this the actual GPT-5 which OpenAI launched?
So we have access to the GPT-5 models, which is the proprietary model trained by OpenAI. And then we also have access to the OSS models, which is the open source ones that OpenAI released.
Perfect. So this is apples to apples comparison. If someone builds their own agent here, they can contrast what OpenAI is responding versus Claude and what our agent is responding. Yeah, that's amazing. One question. On the left, you had these URLs, right? In our case, the URLs are pointing to our blogs. But if someone else gave their own content, which could be internal content sitting in their own Atlassian and Confluence, it would work the same, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I showed you here, all you have to do is select a column with the content, the links. And as long as those links are valid, then you should be able to open.
Got it. What's the difference between a vector search and a table?
A vector search is a organized table. It's basically optimized for search. So essentially, when you're using a vector search index, we're just searching amongst our own like documents in a fashion where it's like we're getting the most relevant documents to a query that we've sent. So we want to fetch documents that are semantically similar to the question we're asking. We do that through embeddings. The knowledge assistant here uses this index powered by vector search in Databricks. We have content, but what we're comparing is this vector created through our embedding models. We use this embedding to compare with our query. It's basically code similarity. Cool thing about agents is an agent framework on Databricks specifically is that we track everything in a experiment. This is not just for AgentBricks specifically. This is for all agents that are built on Databricks. We use MLflow3 for tracking. And so because of that, you can track every single trace and a question sent to the agent. We log the request, the response, and other information as well. So we have like execution time, whatnot. We also have token information, other stuff that can be added to this. And because we have everything centralized in this experiment, we can add different judges and evals to our agent pretty easily. From there, we have a few different ways to go about evaluation. For example, what I've recommended in the past is to create a set of 200 or so gold standard questions that you would want the agent to be able to answer with the correct responses. And what you can do with that is use mlflow.genai to evaluate the quality of those responses using LLM judges. Databricks specifically has a lot of built-in LLM judges that we can use, but you can also use that same framework to attach your own custom LLM judges or custom scores generally, like on non-LLM judges.
So if someone builds an agent on Databricks, then how would they contrast it with other LLM models and check if it's actually performing better? How would you measure it?
Yeah, so through the evals here, you can either create eval sets and attach them all to the same experiment, but you would generally use like LLM judges to create more quantifiable metrics. A caveat here is knowing that LLM judges are, again, LLMs. So you'd want to be able to ensure through human feedback that these LLM judges are performing the way that you'd want them to. So what you can do is we also support having labeling sessions. We also support the ability to create your own review sessions, which means experts can come in and give their feedback on how your agent is performing. You can do that centralized in this experiment itself, and then create the session. And now I have something that I can share out to SMEs and give them an app that allows them to interact with the agent.
Okay. So here I'm assuming they're going to ask a question and then rate the response of the agent, something like that.
You can also add specific traces or specific questions that you've already have in your experiment. For example, I think this is flagged by our scorer. And then you can add this trace directly to a labeling session and have your SMEs review that.
Okay. Another follow-up which I can think of is, so say we built the version 1 of the agent. How do you check or how do you ensure that you are actually improving the agent and not regressing it? Because that's very confusing for my head. In machine learning, you would have that confusion matrix. If someone was doing precision as the core metric or the F1 scores, essentially you'll just check if the F1 score is improving or not, right? So how do you do this in agent land?
This is a good question. And I think, again, caveat here is that we're still not just within Databricks, but within the world
Yeah.
trying to define a lot of the best practices in evaluating agents. Currently, we rely really heavily on LLM judges and human reviewers. Something we're working on is aligning these LLM judges with our human reviewers so we can further improve our judges. Getting a good defining your own metrics is really important and can only be defined for your specific use case. For example, if I was to create a custom for a customer support bot, something important to a customer is brevity. So you can easily create a scorer that kind of scores long responses negatively. And that's one metric you can assign to your LLM agent. But it's important to make sure that you're addressing kind of different parts of the agent, not just length, but also tone. You can have different LLM judges for different aspects of your agent to ensure that it's not regressing. And you should be able to also track all of that information within your trace logs in your experiment as well.
Is it that scorers button on screen?
Yes, you should be. It's not enabled for this workspace, but turn on production monitoring for this workspace. We can go over this more in depth next time when we start evaluating and create feedback.
Okay, cool. How have you seen customers using AgentBricks?
RAG and in general, searching internal docs is a really valid use case. That's probably the most common use case that I'm seeing. How do we search it easily? And how do we put an LLM on top of this? Not only is that a very straightforward use case, like that's something that we can easily do with the knowledge assistant, customer support, where you have FAQs and documentation ready to be analyzed and ingested, but people want to interact with them in a more like natural way. That's another use case that I've been seeing a lot. Those are the most common ones because those are the ones with the most amount of documentation.
One follow-up there is we tried to build a drag bot, but we didn't like the responses. When we tried AgentBricks, it was much better. Why is it better? Why is it not just a RAG app? What's the difference?
I think there are a lot of optimizations applied behind the scenes with this knowledge assistant. That's not to say you can't achieve the same level of performance as AgentBrick, but it would take you a lot longer because the enhancements that we've made is like stuff that we've seen across the board for the last year and a half. It would just be a lot more effort to apply that and write that from scratch. But we've basically optimized that in a way where it's like straightforward.
Okay. So who can build their first agent on AgentBricks? Who do you think is the right user?
Yeah, I think anyone who has worked with Databricks or has worked on Databricks before should feel comfortable to create their first agent brick. I don't think it's very complex. And as you saw like a few seconds ago, it only takes a few clicks.
And essentially, it's one way to quickly validate if the thing is going to work out, right? If you have a use case in mind, you try it out. If you see the response is like 60% already there, and it's valuable, then I think it's a good way to prove out that it's worth investing more time, right?
Yeah, it's a good pre-POC. You can figure out, is this valid? That's a good point.
What do we plan to cover in the next session?
Yeah, the next session will be our first iteration of improving this agent. We can talk a little bit more about labeling sessions, feedback, evaluation, custom scores, and improving the quality of this agent.
All right, folks, hope this was helpful. If you want to go deeper, we run a website called databricksters.com where we publish one piece of technical content each week, blog or video. Every single blog comes with code. The promise is simple. If you like an article, you should be able to copy paste the code, tweak it for your data, and run your own use case in production. That's the bar we hold ourselves to: real world, reusable, and reality tested content, not theory. The AgentBricks series follows the same principle. So if you follow along, you won't just build a demo agent, you'll build an agent that you can actually support, monitor, improve, and ship to production. In the next episode, Veena and I will talk through how we are improving our own agent, how we evaluate quality, what to watch out for, and how to prove that the version 2 and 3 are actually better and not worse. If that sounds helpful and you're not already subscribed, please do subscribe and follow along the series. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next Agent Break session.